Hello, everybody, back to WatchTime Live, one of the last presentations of today. Thanks for joining us. I'm here with Christoph Grainger-Herr from IWC. He was appointed as the Chief Executive of IWC Schaffhausen in 2017. Since he took the helm, he has implemented new communication and marketing strategies to better meet the consumer's changing habits and to, in his own words, really having a dialogue with our client. And I think it's safe to say that just simply by being here, he clearly demonstrated how committed he is to that goal. The brand has also just reopened its flagship store in Zurich. I was fortunate enough to, because I'm still locked down here, to already have been there, offering an atmosphere now of a motor racing workshop, and obviously without the greasy hands, but more importantly, the over 150-year-old luxury watchmaker, which is actually about half an hour away from where I am right now, has been continuously working on its commitment to improve the brand's sustainability practices. The new IWC manufacturing sites, for example, use 100% renewable electricity from grid and rooftop solar panels. Chris, thank you so much for being here and telling us a bit about what's going on with IWC these days. I think you're actually calling in from Schaffhausen, aren't you?
Yes, hello, Roger. Hello, everybody. I can see a lot of different places popping up there from Vegas all the way to Miami. Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for joining the session. Thank you for having me at WatchTime Live. It's an absolute honor. And yes, I am in Schaffhausen because just like you, we're all more or less locked down. I think we're probably just on the verge of sort of a second short circuit breaker lockdown here in Switzerland. And yes, I haven't left the greater Schaffhausen area for some time. Oh, wow, Nepal. That's a long way away.
Roger, you're muted.
Yep, I just realized that. I thought I clicked, but apparently I did not. Welcome to the world of Zoom. No, apparently I would have wished we could have done that face-to-face, but even half an hour is difficult these days, especially with moving in between places. But it's really an honor being here. Well, maybe let's start with where I just ended with Zurich, the new boutique. What does that mean for the brand? Especially what I thought very interesting is that you picked the topic of racing and you actually put one of the most beautiful cars in there that currently exists on Earth. What does that mean to the other boutiques? Is that something that is going to be used all over the world, or is it just Zurich exclusive?
Yeah, so basically, you know, in the changing times that we live in, when consumer habits are changing really rapidly, we've seen that during the early stages of COVID, how quickly everything has moved to video. We've all discovered Zoom, live streaming, the Insta Lives and everything else. And of course, we've seen a major shift in remote ways of interacting with brands, be that on the telephone or be it video chat or be it digital. And we actually opened remote boutiques very quickly where we digitalized all of our boutiques into a VR experience that you could visit and then Zoom with our sales associates directly in live. And we really tried to work out in that period what the physical part of the omnichannel retail experience was going to be moving forward. And we really thought that in order for people to come to a physical store in this context and, you know, looking into the future, we thought not only do we have to integrate that properly into the digital journey, but also we have to make sure that the physical space then is a real experience that's worth actually coming to. So we're trying to create concept flagship stores that really are completely immersive and that really provide an absolutely unique experience that becomes a destination. So the one in Zurich is themed to represent the home base of our classic racing team with our 300 SL race car on display. And everything is themed in every detail, all the way to the food and bev and all the little accessories, a fashion collection with period correct from Costa Mesa and so on, to represent this world of IWC racing, our Formula One sponsorship and our classic racing team. But this will be completely unique. This is an absolute one-off, never to be repeated like that. And it's basically an event that you can walk into every day of the week. But when we do the other 8 to 10 of these concept stores around the world, they will all tell a completely different individual story for each location.
And I can confirm that. I mean, the reception I did receive in Zurich was simply amazing. They didn't know who I was. and they just opened everything to me, and I got to see pretty much everything. And you even brought some pictures, I see. So I think that's really worth sharing with the
Yeah,
audience.
absolutely.
And we have Kevin already commenting that the IWC Boutique in New York is, and again, I can confirm that a beautiful store, but wait till you see Zurich.
Yeah, so New York was, I think I did in 2009 or something. I actually designed that store myself, similar to the one in Zurich. It's a couple of generations, obviously beyond what we have in New York and Madison Avenue, and we hope to be able to refurbish that quite soon. What we have here in Zurich, as you can see when you walk in, on the screen, you have that real experience of sort of a racing garage type environment, and we combine the products with the memorabilia from all our different racing activities, and then a big focus on engineering, both automotive and of course the watch engineering. And one of the big innovations that I want to point out are the completely open displays. This is the first time we're actually having watch presentation where there's no glass in between the client and the watches. We call them sensation displays, and they are linked to Inspify screens underneath, very intuitive touchscreen interaction, where you can actually find out all the details about the watches, try on different straps and so on. And it's really an amazing difference how much better you can see the watches when you don't have a traditional display case. You can also read all about our brand story in an interactive brand book. This is something we've introduced here that combines projected video on actual paper so that you can actually flick through a book, but you have all of the video content. And then this is an area I like particularly. This is actually what we call the engineering lab, where we tell the complete story of our technical innovations over the years, all the milestones in watchmaking with historic watches, and also, of course, all the key personalities from Albert Peloton to Kurt Klaus, from Jones to Günter Blümlein, who are all featured here with their contributions to IWC. We then show for the first time in retail how actually an entire ceramic case is being manufactured step by step. You can see there also all the different case materials, their respective weight, you can touch and feel. And we have a live link to the manufacturer where you can actually see what is happening in Schaffhausen in the new manufacturing center. The car is not just a car, it's a virtual driving simulator with VR goggles where you're actually able, as a guest, to drive a mountain pass road in Switzerland. And to the side of that, we actually feature race-worn timepieces from Lewis Hamilton, Toto Wolff, David Coulthard, Bernd Schneider, and so on. So starting to feature a whole lot of unique watches. We have a custom studio as well, where you can have all the personalization done. You can pick from all the different bracelets and straps. And we also here offer straps that are actually made from the red upholstery leather of the 300 SL Goldwing. So again, quite a unique feature that you can only get from this particular boutique.
And I think the car is a real one. Like
the car is a real one, yes, because as you can see here in this image, actually, this is underneath the car. So this is the basement with the watchmaker and the live link, and you can see up that little glass area there at the top actually shows you the whole engine, gearbox, transmission, and everything from underneath. So yes, it's a fully working real 300 SL. And one of the features we offer here now as well is our patented AR Watchmaker Headset. And that means that the watchmaker can actually stream the image from his magnifying glass directly to either a big screen in the boutique or on WhatsApp video or anywhere in the world. So if you're having your watch serviced in the Zurich boutique, the watchmaker can connect with you and actually walk you through the watch movement and show you exactly what's going on. And we combine this with a live link that you see on the left, where we actually have video footage from all of the different manufacturing steps in Schaffhausen. So it gives a much closer and better experience of how IWC watches are being manufactured than anything we ever had before. And also down here, we actually started to sell actual vintage collectible IWC watches from the world of racing, presented together with our partners Watchfinder. And whether you're after a Genta Ingenieur or rare prototype of one of our limited editions of Ingenieur in the past, or like a Pilot's Double Chrono or something like that, you will find that down here and you can buy it directly from us.
And you mentioned that you were actively involved with the design of the boutiques in the past. So, and I think that's something that not everyone in the audience knows. What was your involvement as in the design process of the boutiques?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually an interior architect by training. So I'm actually a designer. I came to IWC because I designed the museum for IWC here in Schaffhausen and started to work on boutiques and all of the trade fair exhibitions like the SIHH and nowadays Watches and Wonders. Biggest project was probably the new manufacturing center. I can give you a little glimpse of that as well, what that looks like. That was probably my longest and most intense design project. And then, of course, still I'm involved in a lot of the watch design, the concept design, of course. This is the beautiful new building we opened about 3 years ago that houses all of our case manufacturing, our movement part manufacturing, and our movement assembly. So really all of the components from a raw bar of metal to a finished watch movement and finished watch case are done in this facility. And then our historic headquarters, this is sort of the image from back in the day, a bit of CGI of what it would have looked like, 1868. This is where we do final assembly, quality testing, all of the administrative offices, and of course the after sales service as well. And one other thing that strikes me, when Jones, obviously as many of you will know, we have an American founder who came from Boston over in 1868, and he set up IWC by the River Rhine. And he actually, you can see that on the screen, he actually used the power of the river with direct sort of cam belt transmission to the side of the manufacturing building to get his power really directly from water. And even today in the new site, all of our power still comes from the hydropower station of the River Rhine, which is just 200 meters down the road here. So you have that really nice continuity between how Jones set up this business to be completely powered by the river, and we still have the same situation today.
And one rather ironic little detail of the history is that he also picked Switzerland because it was known as a low-wage country back then, over 150 years ago.
Still is. I can confirm that.
Well, times have certainly changed, but it's very interesting to see how much he brought knowledge for the industrialization process of watchmaking. So he did have a huge impact. And
absolutely. This is also what we're telling in our new film called Born of a Dream. That's really all about that founding story featuring James Marsden. And he came and he brought the idea of American manufacturing technology and that sort of American system of watchmaking to Switzerland. And he actually started the first ever centralized watchmaking process here in Schaffhausen, because previous to that, most of the watchmaking was done in home assembly, individually by farmers in the winter months, etc. So he really brought that sense of modernity and process to it. And that's, I think, still in our engineering DNA today. We really combine the best of craftsmanship with the best of technology to, in the end, make the best product. And I think that's something that people can really see when they come to our manufacturing center, and why, in the context of COVID, we've also opened a virtual manufacturing visit program where we can actually live take you to the manufacturer and give you a little bit of a closer look at how we make our watches, even if you can't physically visit at the moment for obvious reasons.
We're getting quite a lot of comments regarding the beautiful boutique pictures we've just seen, and one of them, which I think is quite descriptive for the misunderstanding, is not sure if a riffraff like me would be allowed into such a fine establishment. Obviously jokingly meant, but I mean, if you put aside that the watch industry, a traditional retail store always needs to have a certain element of security, which usually ends up being a security guard and a closed door, but it really didn't feel like something that is exclusive in a way that you're not allowed. You can really
absolutely. And again, this is absolutely anchored in our DNA. We're an approachable brand. We're very transparent. We feature our people in our communication very, very much at the forefront. And the last thing that I want to be is sort of restrictive, exclusive, or putting up these barriers. And I know that, as you're pointing out, obviously the bane of our lives is that in street boutiques, of course, we often are faced with the insurance restrictions of closed doors. I wouldn't love to have that. Of course, in New York or Madison, you do need it because it's rather windy most of the year. But we try to be as open, as welcoming as we humanly can. And clearly in Zurich, we are happy to have everybody, to let them experience the story of IWC, to come in for a drink, for a cup of coffee, whatever you're after. I hope that
I can
IWC boutiques, and if that should ever not be the case, let me know. We'll sort that out.
Good. Now that we have you online. What I think is rather interesting for a luxury watch brand is your understanding of sustainability, and because I think the luxury industry, apart from the product already being in some way very sustainable, because it literally lasts forever, but there is a real sustainability issue, and you have been addressing that quite aggressively and in a very innovative way. Would you care to explain a little bit why this is not just important to you as a company, but why it's also important to us as collectors?
Yeah. No, I think the key point is that a luxury product at the end of the day is a purely emotional and non-essential product that sits somewhere on the borderline between product engineering, industrial engineering, and art. And as such, I think it is really, really important that in today's context, our clients can actually genuinely feel good about the product they buy. And that's why it is so important that we make a product that is as responsibly manufactured as we possibly can. And of course, nobody is perfect. We're not perfect, but it's about trying to improve constantly on what you're doing. And secondly, being open in the way that we communicate on exactly what we're doing and how we're doing it. I think, as you said, the product is intrinsically sustainable because it's the energy to make it comes from the River Rhine. After that, it's mechanically powered. It lasts forever. We look after it forever. And it also means that, in an automatic watch, it's only the power of your wrist and your movement that actually supplies the energy for the watch to work. And what we think is that today, how many companies are there in the world, especially in widely captured consumer products, where we were founded 152 years ago, you can find every step of the process from initial design, all of the implementation, the engineering, the manufacturing, the finishing, the packaging. And in the end, the watch has literally just come from here and is shipped to its final destination. And, we don't have to say today, engineered by IWC in Switzerland and manufactured elsewhere. It's really here in the heart of Europe. We're preserving skills, preserving employment, making sure that that artisan base is maintained, and where we don't ship a product around the globe 6 or 7 times before it gets to the client. And I think there is many ways in which we can work on that to make that even better. But that's, I think, why we are so strongly to make, in terms of strongly after the impact reduction, because we really do believe that in a luxury product like ours that also commands a premium price point, you want our clients to feel genuinely good about what they've purchased. And that should not come at the cost of, economic environmental impact.
And I really applaud you for doing that. Something else that I noticed, and especially now that during the lockdown and the pandemic, but again, this is something that has been going back years and years and years. You have been one of the most innovative and fastest brands when it comes to new digital channels. I mean, you guys have been implementing social media before the term was even coined. That was back in 2000, even slightly before that. You had digital training tools, et cetera, et cetera. And I think now, and that probably was also accelerated due to COVID-19, you're even offering virtual visits.
Yeah.
That's something that you just implemented to at least help us a little bit get over the fact that we were supposed to visit you with a group of collectors in June, which unfortunately didn't happen. So thank you for that.
Listen, it's one of those things, we tried after the first lockdown, also our retailers, everybody tried to do a little bit of live events, but literally an evening behind face masks, with everybody trying to shout at each other. It's just nobody's going to look back and say, wow, that was a great experience. So that therefore, we had to be inventive. We had to come up with remote ways of connecting. I think we've done in the digital presentation this year, we had a lot of VR and AR experiences to bring that a little bit closer. We did a lot of virtual watchmaking classes where the kit was actually delivered to people's homes. And then the watchmaking class was done on Zoom, essentially, with everybody having the kit and the catering delivered to their front door, COVID secure. So you just have to come up with all of these things. And, going forward, I hope we'll come back to a healthy mix of actual human interaction powered by better technology. But, in terms of the customer interaction and being with people, it's just not the same on Zoom for sure. But on the Seratanium, by the way, thank you whoever asked that. Yes, we are. Seratanium is quite a complex machining and finishing and firing process. That's why we started on a couple of references to really find our feet in terms of the frequency of how we produce it. But of course, you will see more Seratanium releases next year, and also, of course, in different product collections.
That actually is a perfect segue to head over to the products. You just released another pilot watch that was both available off and online. Could you take us through some of the more recent releases just so that we see what's going on product-wise?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So this year is really the year of the Portuguese watch line. We've in the manufacturing center, we've been able to really ramp up our internal movement manufacturing. This was mainly our new chronograph movement, the caliber 69, which you saw appear in the Portuguese chronograph towards the end of last year. So that iconic Portuguese chronograph from the mid 1990s, now with an open case back and that 69 caliber in-house chronograph movement inside. And at the same time, we've launched a new high-end automatic movement, the caliber 82. It comes with peloton windings, ceramic components, and so on. And that is actually a smaller diameter automatic movement that allows us to not only launch a Portuguese automatic in 40mm no date, which was one of the key launches this year, to complement our bigger 7 days automatic at 42mm, but that also allows us to put complications on this movement, such as perpetual calendar, the quick glass module, that now beats inside a 42mm Portuguese perpetual calendar, which is a lot more wearable size. It still feels like an IWC Portuguese, but really the new movements that are coming out of the manufacturing center allowing us to just bring the sizes down a little bit, smaller diameters, and also slightly less thick watches. On top of that, we launched a completely new execution of the Yacht Club this year, which is the third generation of the Yacht Club. That now comes for the first time in the Portuguese with a metal bracelet, a standard, and featuring our in-house 89 caliber flyback chrono. And on that one, we have launched a quite unique new complication, which is called the Moon and Tide, which is our first ever Moon and Tide indicator that actually gives you the moon correctly for the northern southern hemisphere. And you can set the high tide, low tide point for any location on Earth to show you the tide cycle correctly for that location going forward. That couple of new complications, tourbillon chrono, tourbillon perpetual calendars in the Portuguese as well, and a really lovely boutique collection with blue dials in red gold with blue woven calf leather straps. So all around like a quite complete Portuguese collection, I'd say.
And I was stunned by the fact that it really works with a metal bracelet. That's something that I would not have expected. I've seen it in Geneva, and at first when you heard a Portuguese on a stainless steel bracelet, I was like, no way. But it does look really good on the wrist.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we had both on the Yacht Club and the standard Portuguese Chrono 3716. It works very well on the metal bracelet. I was equally surprised. I mean, here we see a little bit the collection overview on the left-hand side. You can see that new, very clean automatic 40, no date, small second at 6 o'clock, comes in steel and in gold. Next to that, you see that perpetual calendar in 42mm. And then on the right-hand side, you see the new Yacht Clubs on bracelet and the Yacht Club Moon and Tide on the blue textile strap, second from the right. And then here you have exactly what you're pointing out. So this is the iconic Portuguese chronograph, both on the leather strap as well as the metal bracelet on the left.
Yep, would not have thought that this works that nicely. And yes, still one of my favorites, a tool. Thank you for noticing.
You know how we actually came across this is our colleagues in some of the point of sales, completely without talking to us, actually put the Portuguese chronograph onto an Ingenieur metal bracelet, which doesn't quite fit, but almost. And you could kind of get a hint that this was going to work. And then we just engineered it for the 3716 case, which is again quite tricky because this is a watch case that actually slopes away at the case back. So you don't have that natural attachment point where you could rest a metal bracelet connecting link. But after a little bit of engineering work, we worked it out, and we can actually retrofit that now onto all of the current 3716 references.
And it's interesting that you are mildly returning to the GST design of metal bracelets that we had before the 2000s. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Looks good.
Yeah, no, one of my favorite designs as well. I think you'll see that as well in the pilot's watches. What we just launched, the Portuguese, we're trying to really bring back that purity in terms of the form, the engineering approach, the materials, because I think that's really what IWC stands for, especially in the pilots and Portuguese. Really trying to work on those products to perfect them over time.
Yep, and I think that's also something that especially collectors have been asking a lot in the last couple of years to have a stronger approach to the more puristic design appeal that IWC especially had at the end of the 90s. And I think this is a very attractive move.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else in the pipeline we need to see? I mean, I'm getting comments from those are incredible.
Yeah, I think one thing I'd love to briefly talk about is our launch that is literally sort of a week old. It's the IWC Top Gun Chronograph Sfti. That's been a piece I've been looking forward to quite a bit. Just share this part of the presentation. I hope you can see that. It doesn't let me actually jump to the slides, so I have to fast forward to that quickly. There we go. That's this piece. So that's the next generation of pilot's watch construction in all black. So here we have a ceramic case combined with ceratanium pushers, a ceratanium crown, a ceratanium case back, and the clasp as well. So that allows us really to combine the best of both worlds with a ceramic case with the titanium inner container, and then all of the other black bits, which we weren't able because you can't do a ceramic case back. So we always did that in titanium. Now we can do it in ceratanium, actually giving us a completely black watch. And this really is the first available version of our military collaboration watches. So we started years ago to work with different element squadrons and the Top Gun school at Fallon to make watches for naval aviators. And the SFTI, which stands for Strike Fighter Tactics Instructor, was the first Top Gun watch that we actually created for the Fleet Squadron Tactics Instructors. And this one is now a civilian available version of that. And this will be the starting point of a whole range of professional pilots from IWC that are directly informed and inspired by our military collaboration. You know, it's also the Mojave Desert came from that, because that was literally after a visit to China Lake Naval Base that we came back with that idea, having clearly seen the desert color flight suits. So these are, you know, the whole row of things coming now that is literally inspired by our professional watches for Navy pilots.
And on behalf of the audience, we still find it's unfair that you only produce 500 pieces of that. But that was.
I agree. I agree. I think at the time we were quite worried about the colored ceramics and whether we are going to be able to make more. But it may possibly not be the last Mojave watch, so we'll see.
Just out of curiosity, being involved with the military that heavily and also for already a couple of years, have they ever taken you in for a flight? And if so, what is your call sign?
So, you know, I'd be quite excited to see just how much I'm passing out at 7G pulling out of a canyon. But you do need to in order to be able to go on the back of an FA-18, you do need the full parachute ejection training, which I have not yet been able to complete. I would love to. I'd absolutely love to. So far, I've done the Mustang, I've done the Spitfire, I've done a couple. I've been up with the Blades display team, but I have not yet tried a Super Hornet, and it will probably be a video footage that people will cherish forever after.
And it could be interesting to see how HR is reacting to that when a CEO is going into a training session like that. So that could be interesting.
That's easy. I don't tell them. That's you know, I turned the tracker off on my phone. Good. And that's the end of that.
But we had quite a couple of questions regarding ceratanium, and yeah. I remember correctly, it started with the Aqua Timer, which was one of the more, let's say, complicated pieces, which automatically limited the usage of the material. And you have come a long way with the material.
Yeah, so yeah, it's a proprietary material that really combines the best of titanium and ceramics, being scratch resistant and fracture resistant, because it's essentially a titanium alloy underneath. It's a really, really complex material to work with. First of all, to forge the raw material, which is done for us in Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania, is very, very difficult at different diameters to get the ceratanium, the ceramic infusion into the titanium to spread evenly throughout the material. So that's challenge number one. And every time you try a new diameter of rod, it's a completely new saga from start to finish to try and get this absolutely even. So the first few attempts that we had just produced a cloudy look in the end because it wasn't homogeneous all the way through the bar. Now, after it's forged, we get it as raw material. You can see that on the second picture here from the left. We then slice it into slices ready for the case milling and machining, which are the next two steps then. And once the case is fully machined, we sandblast the case completely as an initial surface finish. And then that's the next picture there, the second from the right. It gets fired in a kiln here in the manufacturing center in Schaffhausen. Secret formula, how exactly that's done. And in the end, you end up with this very, very dark gray or black finish that you first saw. You're quite right. Yes, well done for spotting that, Roger. That was the Aqua Timer Perpetual Digital, where we did a limitation, I think, of 50 pieces, if I remember correctly, in Seratanium a few years ago, and then really brought that into a pilot's watch Mark 18 style. And after that, of course, last year, we saw it in the double chronograph Seratanium. And we're really, really excited to be coming with more pieces in Seratanium.
And Roberta is already asking for an engineer 42 millimeter in Seratanium. So
yeah, with the next generation engineer, for sure.
He made sure to let us know. So what else is new product-wise that we should see?
So there's a very, very interesting, very pure pilot's watch is coming just after Christmas that I'm very, very excited about. That might also be a Seratanium piece. Yeah, and after that, I'm sure we'll have some great stuff coming in April.
Oh yeah, as always. But do you have a favorite among the releases from this year, or something that is close to your heart, or what are you wearing actually?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the moment, I'm wearing the Pilot's Big Pilot Perpetual Calendar Rodeo Drive, which is my daily watch at the moment. From the Portuguesa collection, I actually really love the Portuguesa Auto 40 because for me, that is a brilliant everyday size. It's an understated, not too classical piece. If you have it in silver dial with a blue index, it's actually quite sporty, which suits me. And I just absolutely love the purity of that watch.
I would agree. I mean, the Big Pilot, you can never go wrong with the Big Pilot, even though mine is not the perpetual, but the regular one.
Let me just shut that window quickly, Roger. I think the church bells are going a bit bananas. So we'll be right back.
We don't mind. I mean, this is part of the whole charm of being in Schaffhausen or in Switzerland. There is always a church quite nearby.
Yeah, 7 o'clock on a Saturday. There you are.
Yep. And it's getting dark. We are getting some questions from the audience, and Ivan would like to know, what is your selection process for sport ambassadors or ambassadors in general that suit your brand best?
Yeah, so what I'm looking for in ambassadors is an authentic, so interest in IWC and love for the product and an authentic relationship. So the first thing that I always do is I look at what people are wearing, I look at the history, and then I meet our ambassadors and I see if we click, if there's projects we want to work on together. I mean, when you think about all the stuff we've done with Lewis over the years, Lewis Hamilton, he's done amazing projects with us that really are a lot of fun to produce. And that's when it works. I think Bradley Cooper is somebody who's worn a Big Pilot for many, many years before I met him. In the end, I think first met him in Heathrow Airport in London over breakfast in the airport lounge, which is quite an interesting experience, trying to have breakfast with Bradley Cooper because you're taking more selfies, fans in the lounge than anything else. But he's a very creative guy. He really, really cares about filmmaking, about how he puts his work together, and we clicked and it worked, and there we were. And I think Tom Brady is a similar story. Tom Brady has ordered watches from IWC for quite a number of years. We've always been in contact, and we always said, well, one day maybe it works out. And then it was meant to be a couple of years ago, and we met in New York, and yeah, it was just. So I'm looking for a genuine relationship. I'm looking for authenticity in the products, in the care for watchmaking. James Marsden, for example, is a real watch guy. I mean, he probably is. He likes to nerd out of watches as much as any of us. So it just needs to work, and you have to be able to want to do projects together. Otherwise, it's just a paid ambassador. It doesn't work for me.
We have some other questions, Chris. Lightspire was wondering which IWC watch is the best seller in the lineup, and do you see a shift towards demand in smaller 39 millimeter or 40 millimeter case sizes?
Yeah, so we're fairly balanced across the sports and classic ranges. So definitely, the Portuguesa chronographs and the Pilot's chronographs are extremely popular. Same as the Portofino chronos and automatics are, especially in Asia. The shift that I really see, that I globally see, is the shift towards sportier models. The shift really more towards Pilot's models, bracelet watches. Yes, smaller diameters we see, but I don't particular, it's not a universal global trend that's happening everywhere at the same time. There's still markets where people are really looking for larger diameters, parts of Latin America, parts of Europe. The US market, definitely, we see a trend towards smaller diameters for sure. And overall, what is really shared globally, almost across every single market, is that we see a definite shift towards sports models.
Do you also see more interest from women in your watches since you have a range of diameter?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's two very distinct markets. I think there's ladies today that are buying and wearing men's watches or men's design watches. We see that a lot. That's for us, especially the Portuguese chronograph, tends to be the first choice that ladies go for. And then we also have smaller diameters in the Portofino, 34 and 37, 36 in the Da Vinci. And that is still something at the moment where, you know, this is mostly a preferred size for Asian wrists. In the West, we see clearly still also slightly larger diameters, 38, 39, and even the 41 in the Portuguese chronograph being quite popular.
Great.
Thanks for the question, by the way.
And something that always is on top of my mind, you have been extremely active in pushing in-house capabilities over the last couple of years, and obviously this is not a short-term project. This is something that has been going on for decades now, almost. Where are you in your strategy in having as much in-house as possible, especially when it comes to base calibers? I mean, we do know, especially with the Aqua Timer Birch Edition, which, by the way, I did get to see in real life, and it looks amazing, much better than on the pictures. That's a really cool watch. Where are you with the base calibers?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've introduced our caliber 82, as I mentioned earlier, in the Portuguese. This is going to be the mainstay of I'd say, mid-segment for IWC of automatic watches. We've also launched caliber 32 in the Spitfire Auto last year, 39 millimeters, which is that new first level in-house IWC automatic movement. And we're rolling those out. And of course, our specializations in chronographs and calendars today mean we have 3 distinct in-house chronograph movements, the split Flydax, 89 caliber chrono, the 69 caliber, and then on the 59 hand wound, we have the mono pusher chrono as well that we launched in the Portuguese and Laureus model this year. So we're really trying to have as broad a base as possible on in-house chronographs, and then of course in the perpetuals as well, which now comes on 3 different base calibers, actually, including the chrono, where we're really having one of their strong points. And for me, you know, in movements and cases, we want to have the full capability in-house, especially when it comes to machining robust materials such as titanium, etc., which we've machined ever since the 80s probably at IWC. And then, of course, in auto chrono and complicated movements to have the full capability and full control of the quality.
Ironically, when going back to Mr. Jones' decision to come to Switzerland, he picked a strategically smart location due to the River Rhine. What he probably didn't know back then, that he located the factory quite far away from the rest of the Swiss watch industry. Is this something that I mean, being isolated, is that something that you consider as an advantage, or would you like to be closer to the rest of the competition? How is that?
No, of course, you know, it comes with every element you can imagine when you're away from a traditional center, but also seeing that we don't have a métier d'art approach to watchmaking, an engineering approach. I think this is also due to the fact that we're quite close to a different industry here, and that's really the German car industry. You know, all of those brands, be it Mercedes, AMG, Porsche, Audi, all of those brands are close to here, BMW, not far away. So there's a lot of overlap in our engineers and our technical staff between the car industry and the watch industry. And this is something that you don't have in the west of Switzerland. Yes, sometimes I wish I didn't have to train every single watchmaker the way that we do, and we don't obviously have the pool of the Jura Mountains or Geneva here at our disposal. But at the same time, I think for the style of watchmaking that we pursue at IWC, I think it actually suits us to be more in this sort of engineering mindset than the sort of arts and craft métier d'art mindset. So I've never thought of it as a disadvantage. I think it allows us also to have quite a unique culture because people often worked for IWC many years. I mean, look at me. I mean, I've been here for 14 years now. It's been almost my first job out of university. I've only worked for a year and a half before coming to IWC back in 2006. And that also makes sure that it's quite a unique environment, quite a unique atmosphere at IWC.
That's brilliant. I think what something that's really impressive, and that's also a lot has to do with David Cypher's work on working on the history of the brand. You have an amazing past with stories that we didn't know, and I'm fortunate enough to actually have his book with me. So that's something everyone in the audience who is interested in learning more about the true history of IWC, this is something that everyone has to read at some point. You took over in 2017. And we briefly had some short discussions before we started the session with one of the stories that I've never heard of, which touched me deeply. What was some of your personal highlights for these last 3 years with the brand in the position that you currently hold?
And sorry to interrupt, Chris, could you please stop your screen share so the collectors can all see you?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yes, I think the highlight clearly is early on, we were able to celebrate 150 years of IWC, which was amazing, opening the new manufacturing center, coming with the Jubilee collection, and really celebrating the work of people like Kurt Klaus, and seeing the effect that it had on all of our watchmaking colleagues to move into a new facility like that. People who've spent many, many years of their careers here at IWC and suddenly experience a completely different side. And, you know, you cannot, I mean, for me personally, you can never replicate that by designing a store or designing an exhibition. When you create a building that hopefully will be here for many hundreds of years, and you see 250 of your colleagues actually moving in for the first time and feeling uplifted by the environment and being inspired to talk to each other, to improve processes, to, you know, put all their passion, hearts and soul into those watches. I think that for me was probably the moment that touched me most in terms of what we saw. And then of course, seeing the feedback from our clients when they started coming, etc. It's something you don't do very often, but actually to mark such a milestone and actually then be able to have a complete new chapter of the way we make watches, and now that being the basis for being able to launch all those movement and case innovations, I think that's clearly been the highlight for me of the early first 3 years.
Thank you. And I think we have a question from someone talking to Sarah, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, and this will be the last question. I did have somebody message, just this person is a young collector and they're interested in working in the watch industry, and they were wondering if you have any advice.
Yeah, I think
break into the watch industry or.
Yeah, absolutely. I think because we're working for emotional products, it is all about understanding the look and feel of a brand, understanding the identity. You know, that's a major part of what we do. I'm always somebody, and I never look at CVs in terms of university degrees, where people have done their training. This is nice, but at the end of the day, what I'm looking for is always people who bring the passion, who bring the drive, and who really intrinsically and instinctively feel what is IWC and what's not IWC. Because this is the bit I can't teach anybody. I can teach you everything from, well, not me personally, but we can teach you from watchmaking to accounting, everything you need to know for the job. But I think in our industry, it is really, really important to have a feel for the brand you're going to be working with. So what I would recommend anybody who's young and looking to start out in the watchmaking industry is try and start with the brands that you naturally feel at ease with, that speak to you and where you think, yeah, I get it what they're trying to do. And I'm completely honest, and I often see people changing companies who have great CVs, but just because somebody was really successful and really good at one brand, in our industry, I don't think relates necessarily into being able to do the same at another brand, because you either feel and identify with a certain set of values, a brand, a message, or you don't. And there's brands out there where I couldn't work because I don't understand, you know, in my heart, what this brand is telling me. And I think if you're looking to start out, I think, yes, make sure you work somewhere with prospects and you go after a job that is future-proof, I'd say. But at the same time, I would just literally follow your heart and go for what you feel passionate about, because that's a bit where it really, that matters. Everything else you can learn on the way. And other than that, on my Instagram, Chris Grainger-Herr, you'll find my mobile number, you find my DMs. So just shoot me a message.
Be careful with that, people.
Well, that's people
I'm-
always say that.
Just wait 1 second.
People always say that. My cell phone number is in my bio. So,
Yeah.
and I've had no negative experience with this. Well, it's probably going to change tonight. I hate messages, but no, literally, you know, I'm really all for interaction.
Thank you
That's
so much. I
wonderful.
mean,
Thank
this
you.
is, we have clearly felt the passion you have for the brand, and it's also amazing to see that this passion is shared by the audience as well. As much as we have loved to have you in person with a real life event, I think it's at the same time, we couldn't have had you in our living rooms without a different setup. So has
Yeah.
been amazing to have the CEO of IWC Schaffhausen on our screen in our living rooms, interacting with us in this way. And thank you so much on behalf of WatchTime, on behalf of the audience. This has been both a pleasure and an honor. Thank you so much. And sorry for having ruined your Saturday. I hope
No,
you...
come on. This is that's what we're here for. No, actually, you know, this would have been the weekend of the Austin Grand Prix, I think. This would have been the Texas Grand Prix in Formula One. So I would have been over anyway. This would have segued into one another quite nicely. But here we are. So instead, it's Portugal this weekend, and I'm here in Schaffhausen. But it was really, really great to speak to you. Thank you very much for all your questions as well. Roger, thanks for having me on.
Thank you for being here. All the best. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you.